Hi everyone, this is Renee, and I wanted to show you something new. It's actually a couple of weeks old, almost a month old at this point, a little over 3 weeks old, dated November 6th, 2017, and it's on my higherastro.com website. You can also get to this by going to higherastrology.com, going to the media section, drop down to articles, and um, you can go to the archives to the right and go to November of 2017, just in case this is in the far future when you come across this video. Um, let's see how to begin. Let me go to that first of all. And the article is titled, um, there we are. Okay, here we are. I'm going to also include a direct link that probably would be a lot easier. The exact title is The Natural Forms of Simple Standing Waves. And what is the inspiration here is nothing less than the Sri Yantra, the Sri Chakra, the um, super divine form of crystalline Om, crystalline pure sound of high spirituality. That's what we've been told, and that's what I believe. But what if we get a little bit more analytical about it and we sort of do some equation work and try to find the equation for the Sri chakra, the Sri yantra? So really, this whole segment is about the uh, science of spirituality, the science of the sound of spirituality in the form of the Sri Chakra. Um, you can open up this article, and the very first line gives you, I think, a pretty good resource, which is a free download of Cymatics, which is an amazing book from like the 1960s. Let me open that up. Hi, hi, my cat is being very talkative. Hi, honey. Aw, hi, sweetie. I have to pet my cat, you know. Okay, so you click on Cymatics, and you'll get this PDF opening up. And I really recommend you page through this PDF. It's fantastic. I don't know, it's one of the more exciting books I've ever come across in my young life, you know, in the 1980s, I think it was, when I did it. And so, yeah, what it's about is this guy, the author, wanted to look at vibrations in wave form, and that can be in the form of water, like the classic image of the milk drop, or it can be in a so in fine particulate solid like salt or sand, and creating waves in sand. Anyone, say, who's visited Colorado and the salt dunes that we have, the sand dunes, I should say, although they're very salty too, as it turns out, but they're sand dunes in Colorado, and there's waves that get created in the sand. I think even people who go to the beach know about this, that waveforms, vibrational wavelets can be formed in sand. And so this guy, here he is with his equipment. In 1972 he passed, it looks like, sadly. Um, but it's just full of beautiful photographs this book is, beautiful equations, beautiful ideas, and yeah, I really recommend you check it out. Okay, so I thought this would qualify to be included in the topic, the general umbrella of astrological research, because research is about investigation at its most basic form, and astrology is about cycles, about vibrations in its most basic form. So, astrological research, I think, can definitely include the science of vibration. And that's what this post is basically about. So here we are. There's, you see here and there on the internet, this image, you know, sort of no author ascribed to it. And what it says, is, like, this was just taken from Pinterest, for example. And what this image says is that the Sri Yantra, also known as the Om Mandala, can be seen, can be formed on a so-called tonoscope. Tonoscope. I know, I've never heard that word either. But what I think the author means to say is that in one of these cymatic kind of plates that have sand or salt or other very, very fine particulate solid, if you vibrate it just right, the Sri Yantra will appear. This is revolutionary idea, that something that we've been taught, that has been painted on um, temple walls for millennia, could be created with the turn of a dial and the vibration being just right, and poof, there it is. That would speak to, if true, that would speak to an underlying fabric to the universe that's holy, or that is mapped directly onto holy ideals. That would speak of vibration writ large as something accessible to anyone. That would speak to the idea that anyone who creates that same vibration, perhaps through the voice, can create this beautiful cathedral of meaning within themselves, around themselves, in front of themselves. Is this possible? Is this true? That's what I wondered. Is this real? Is this true? Because this is radical stuff to me, and very interesting stuff to me. So the idea is the Sri Yantra a cymatic construction? Well, there's actually equations for the cymatic forms as depicted in that PDF. Here I am back in the PDF. I'm paging through it, and you start to see the early structures. Kind of keep these in mind because we'll be referring back to them. Now, like this photo here in the lower right, that might seem like very organic, and it is very organic. It's, I think, made with sand on a steel plate, and it's beautiful, it's organic, and it's highly mathematical at the same time. Is it possible that the Sri Yantra, the same could be said for it? It's organic, beautiful, and highly mathematical at the same time. I personally believe so, but I'd like to have some equations to back it up. A, to back it up, but also B, to be able to share the power of my belief with others. It's one thing to believe in something, it's another to have the equations to send to anyone, not only in the world, but in the universe, and say, look, you can create this cathedral of meaning for yourself. So that's the motivation for this study. Where to get started? Okay. Well, the first things to get started with is, in my case, was to understand the equations for cymatics. And let's go there. If you click on here is a good reference for anyone who wants to get a top-down view of the math. Let's start there. This is a page from Dartmouth on the vibrating drum. It's a lecture, it looks like, from December 1st, almost exactly 7-8 years ago. Cool. 8 years ago. I'm just trying to make it bigger so you can see it easier. This should do it. Alright, good. So, very fancy stuff. Fancy equations. And this is actually for the drum, for the circular surface, for the sand. This is using a lot of what's called partial differential equations. Not too fancy, but yeah, I think we're looking at what, second or third year math major stuff in college. Still looking at second year, third year mathematical kind of major in college kind of stuff. Not too hard. What I want to page down to show you is the final pictures, the results of all these equations that I think he puts, he or she, the lecturer, puts in the slide set. Okay, where are they? Wow, it's really far down. Okay. So the idea is we're trying with all of this math to model the surface of a drum as somebody is playing the drum. And here's our first diagram. This is the cross-section of the surface of the drum. These undulating waves should be familiar with anyone who's felt vibration in metal or, on a drum. And that you can almost feel with your fingertips the rise and fall of the plate or the drum head. And here's a more three-dimensional sort of bringing to life of that cross-section. So here you can see the undulations as a kind of two-dimensional depiction. And here's still 2 dimensions, but it's in a three-dimensional imagery of a three-dimensional image of the undulations. And so that's that classic milk drop breaking the surface of a bowl of milk. So there's some interesting complications the person gets into. So at this point, we're talking about a Bessel function. I used to make Bessel functions in college, and the way I do it was with my morning coffee, where I would just, it was the 1980s, okay? But so it was styrofoam cup of coffee, and all I would do is drag lightly the whole cup along the surface of the table so that the coffee cup would drag along. So friction would create a standing, like a undulation, and the boundaries of the cup would create a standing wave, what's called a standing wave, which means that this wave would not dissipate. Uh, as long as that slight friction based vibration was imparted into the coffee cup, that standing wave on the surface would be created. And it would be exactly like this picture, going back up to this picture. This surface of the coffee looked exactly like this, only there'd be even more rings to the coffee cup surface. And it would stay, like the circles would stay put, they would not disappear. It was not a highly transient phenomenon. If you did it just right, if you pulled the cup just right across the surface of the table, that's what would happen. So, very cool. This is the math of all of that. Something so simple to do in real life. To understand it mathematically is can often be a lot harder. So here we go. Here's a picture I wanted to show you. Here are the so-called first modes of the vibrating drum. So this is a circular drum head, and this is where the uh, the trough of the wave would be. Actually, here there's no trough, no peak. Here there's the sand, let's say, on the surface of the drum would fall right in the middle. If we go to the next higher level of math, where there's two lines that would be formed by the sand. Next form, there'd be one circle again. Here, three lines intersecting equally. Here, a circle and one line. Here, more lines. Here's a circle with two lines in this case. Here's, you can see for yourself how it develops sort of regularly in a standing system that is mathematically derived. These are mathematically derived graphs. Now, if you're saying BS, this has nothing to do with reality, what has this got to do with me, or some such thing? Check this out. I think it's down here. Here we go. Here's a surface of an actual drum where they put actual sand on top of the drum. And lo and behold, what happens? The exact same forms that were described theoretically, like mathematically, here actually get formed in real life, so to speak. And you might say, okay, what has this still got to do with me? If you're that kind of person, let's continue on. What I've done actually is string together not just the first 6 or 8 or however many that was of the drum head formations, but here I think I strung together maybe the first 300 forms. And you can see, let me go back to the beginning. Okay, so here is that first form with just the, I have to pause this better, don't I? Can I make this bigger? Yes, I can. Good. Okay. So here's the form with just the vertical, the one line, I shouldn't say vertical, but the cross line. And what this yellow and blue mean are up and down sections of the vibrating drum head, so that sound is not going to rest in either the very light section or the very dark section, because whatever goes down must go up, back up in vibration when it comes to vibrations. So yeah, sound is not going to settle in either the blue or the white or yellow section, uh, but instead is going to reside right down the middle. And so that's the same form that gives us, let's go back, this guy right here, mode 11, mode 11. Similarly, if we continue, there we go. This form is going to give us two cross lines with four sort of segments. And the sand is not going to reside in the segments, but rather just in the cross lines, because there's too much activity here in the blue and the white. Now, in case you're wondering, still, this is too much or something, like, I need more help to understand this. Let me see if I can do that for you. Hold on one second. Okay. Sorry, I'm having an OBS moment here. Okay, great. This is what I wanted to show you. Good. So here's the equations, or how to implement this in Mathematica. You might be thinking, like, wow, that's a lot of math. But really, it's not too bad. All you really need is, let me make this bigger for you. Okay, here's the equations. And here's a little movie showing that first form, which is where the sand hugs the outer rim. That's the first form. And this is, that classic milk drop hitting the saucer of milk kind of image. So this is what I mean by what goes up must come down in vibration. So as things go up, they go down. Next thing you know. So let me pause this. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to show here right now. No, I don't think so. Let's go back to the article. Okay, here we go. Good. So, that very first form with that you just saw go up and down, is right here. This is the depiction of it. Another way of depicting that movement, that up and down movement, but through color. All right. I recommend you watch this video. It's kind of interesting. I think. I think it is. So once again, the top one is the circular drumhead style vibrating plate. And the bottom one beneath it is going to be the square plate. So just like you can do that math on a circular drumhead, frankly, it's almost as easy to do the math once you get the handle on the math, to do the math on a square drum plate. And you can see at least the beginning stuff looks really parallel. All right, very good. So, in fact, there's 961 forms in the round plate and 1121 forms in the square plate total. That's all of the theoretical forms that can be made by those partial differential equations. Um, Now, in the Sri Yantra, we're talking about a square plate. So I'll be, from here on, for the rest of this article, talking about the square plate, because that is where the Sri Yantra is said to reside. What do I want to talk about next? Oh yeah, of the 1121 forms of the square plate, I'm not seeing any one that looks like the Sri Yantra, to be honest. The closest I come to is number 763, and that's this form right here. It's even that is a little bit, you kind of have to squint and kind of go back a bit. It's not a super clear Sri Yantra. Okay, that's all right. What's possible, it's beautiful though on its own, but what's possible is that since Om is said to be the combination, in fact, in Sanskrit, is definitely the combination of A, U, and A, U, and Om. It's the formation of three sounds in sequence: A, U, and So maybe it's possible that the vibration that creates the Sri Yantra, shown up here once again, or once again down here in the black and white image, maybe it could be said to be the combination, which is to say mathematically, what's the combination of something? It's the sum or the total of something. So maybe it's the sum of three different forms. And so I started to look at combinations of triplicates of these fundamental 1121 forms that I was just talking about. And you can see they can get really exciting, these additions of these three forms. For instance, this is a density plot. You'll notice that there's no skinny black lines. That's because it's only up here in the contour plots. Contour plots, that's what's in the movies too, are contour plots. I switched over to density plot to get rid of the squiggly little thin lines to make things easier to see. And here's the addition of the first form, the 689th form, and the 763rd form, just to give you an example of how things really look pretty, really fast when you do this. But still, this is not really a Sri Yantra. Well, to give you an idea of how many images we'd have to go through to get to all 1121 images and their combinations of three, triplicates of three. I just did up to the 28th image and looked at triplicates of three. Let's see if that's ready at this point. No, it's not really ready. I was going to show you where you can download it. You can just click up here where it says to search for the Sri Yantra ... Even going just up to the 28th image to look at combinations of three, that's over 3,300 images just to go up to the 28th image. Now imagine going up to 1121. That is going to be what 11 choose 3. So 11 factorial, times uh, 3 factorial. These are huge numbers. These are in the trillions. There's probably not enough hard drives on the surface of the planet to hold all of those images. So, something else will need to be done. Um, but I did kind of just randomly pull this one up to give you an idea of how fast and it can become so pretty. But it's still not the Sri Yantra, right? Well, check this out. Okay. That one up here was of the first 689th and 763rd, like I said. This one, oh my goodness, now we're talking. This is the first 52nd and 55th uh, combinations. This is starting to look to me like a Sri Yantra. Yeah. So, one thing I say here is that it's one thing to say there's a synchronistic nature to everything sacred, which is true. I firmly believe that. It is quite another, however, to say, and here is the equation. But I believe with this fairly brief demonstration that you're starting to see, yeah, this is starting to look like the Sri Yantra. Like, I think we're getting there. We're getting there. So two things need to happen next, I think. we can we can record the vibration emitted by master pundits as they chant Om. I would love that personally, and think that can and should be done anyway. And so from there we can sort of back engineer the vibration that they're evoking, and hence from there it's fairly easy to do the partial differential equation. The other thing that can happen is maybe a little bit more programmatically or mathematically, strictly speaking. Something that can be done is some sort of paging through that 11 choose 3. I'm sorry, 1121 choose 3. My goodness. Yeah. That's a huge number. Somehow try to get a handle on that and rank, or not rank, but give a probability for similarity to Sri Yantra imagery, maybe using AI. That's something that bulk computing can do, and maybe should do at this point. It might be, at least to Hindus, to people who love their gurus and love their teachings. I think they, and I count myself as one of them, we would love to be able to, at the turn of a dial, at the push of a button, like evoke the full vibration of perfect Om. Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's interesting. So I'll just leave you with that. That's all there is to this. Once again, you can get here by going to our Astro media articles, and then archives. Go to November of 2017, but I will also put the link below. Okay, thanks everyone.